Good evening. Looks like we have a few people still joining us. I haven't seen a few of our officers yet are missing, but maybe they're busy. Shall we give them 5 minutes, Robert?
I would think so, yes.
Okay.
We've got 36 and climbing. Oh, I show it's 7:02, and so 3 more minutes.
Okie doke. If you haven't joined us before, go ahead, Jolie.
I was just going to say, I see a bunch of scholarship kids on. I'm glad to see that.
Awesome. If you haven't joined us before, why don't you type something in the chat box and welcome. Glad you're here. From our chat group, kind of as we're getting started here, Dana has asked, before we get to the question that brought me here, is this group focused more on honeybees, or is there info to be had about native bees and generally bee-friendly knowledge to be had as well? She says, gotcha. Anyone know some better resources for the side of bees I'm more interested in? Literally came here from my second Google search on the subject. Well, yay, Google. I'm glad you're here. But we are all things honeybees, and we support, if all native pollinators do well, our honeybees do well. And so we take interest in all pollinators, but we kind of are all
there's a group called the Kansas Native Plants, and they have a Facebook page, and they are always posting stuff about butterflies and every insect imaginable, and a lot of people know what they are and can say what they are and stuff. Joe, can you think of any other groups you might be part of? That just seems like most of the people in that one are not only into native plants, but they talk about gardening with natives, but they also talk about all the insects that the plants they have.
Jolie, are you thinking of Native Roots or Casey Roots KC?
No, I'm not in that one. I'm just in the Kansas Native Plant one.
Oh.
I don't know. All I can think of.
Even though our primary interest is with honeybees, I would imagine that we could probably answer a question he had in regards to
natives,
our solitary bees and bumblebees for sure, or could probably point him in the right direction if he had a specific question in regards to the native pollinators.
I've got that good book by Heather Holm I could recommend.
Right.
Let me go get it.
Well, and I have a book too. What was that one, Jolie, that had all the different, actually, I think I've got it over here.
Well, Mike Catsby put a link on the chat screen, but we're 5 after, so we're ready to start, Becky, when you are.
Very good, very good. Let's get this. We have questions. So I want to start off with a screen share that I thought was kind of, funny. All right, let me see. Share screen. Hang on here. I'm sorry. It's a great picture. It's worth sharing.
It was good.
Oh, can you what? Oh, the bee? Nope, that's not it. I've lost it. Dang it. Oh, there it is. This is the one I want to share. Okay, so,
Minimize your Zoom.
What'd you say?
Minimize that one.
Yeah, I'll do, thank you.
Oh, there you go.
But this one isn't maximizing. I don't know why this is not doing what I want it to do. There, okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
It is a hive, a beehive. And my question to the group is, what's wrong with this picture?
It looks sad.
It is, there are multiple opportunities to answer that question. There are quite a few little things wrong with this picture. Anybody want to speak up and be brave and name one?
Well, that second to the top box is upside down, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
that does kind of stick out, doesn't it? You kind of go, what's going on there? Okay, that's one.
Boardman feeder with
With
supers
supers.
on.
That is the key thing right there, is that this person, and it looks like there's sugar syrup in there, is feeding, and I think that it looks like 2 deep boxes up. It looks to me like there's queen excluder there. And then we have maybe a medium, and then maybe a deep on top of that. So we have supers there. This is not from a Northeast Kansas beekeeper. Thank goodness. I would be so embarrassed for Northeast Kansas beekeepers if that was the case. Apparently, this person likes to share the fact that his hives do so well and produce so much honey because he feeds them every 2 weeks all year.
Probably harvesting sugar water too.
I think exactly what is going on
I
there.
wonder if those boxes are frameless, and so it doesn't matter if they're upside down or not.
If they're what? Oh,
Like
frameless.
if it's
Mm.
frameless, like it's just a gobbledygook of beeswax.
Yeah, could be.
I wanna play devil advocate here.
Go for it. This
Is-
is Matt speaking? Is
Yeah,
Matt?
this is Matt. Is there 2 beehives here? So queen in the bottom box. They're feeding that colony. Queen in the second set of boxes. This second set of handles, I have a box that looks like this.
Upside down?
That it doesn't look like, well, the handle hole looks upside down, but it is not upside down because it looks like it goes farther back at the top. Does that make sense?
He is so generous. He's given this guy the benefit of the doubt.
That is the only thing I can think of the whole problem here. Like, I'm like, okay, maybe he's running 2 queens. He's feeding the bottom one. All of the field force helps build up the bottom one, but that's the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah, well,
But it does look like a bad situation to me.
oh my gosh. And that apparently this person advocates that is the way. And the Boardman feeder, Joe hit on that. I am not a fan of Boardman feeders used as an entrance feeder. And if you feed into the fall, using that is just like the recipe for starting robbing. That the feed is too close to the entrance, the bees will be all over it, and you will have a bad situation. But this person is advocating that he feeds his bees every 2 weeks, so he gets fabulous honey crops because there's sugar water. So that was my funny for the night, and we're ready to go to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen now. We've talked about that. So here's the goal. None of you should try to post pictures that make my funny picture montage. Don't do that. That's not good. So this first question that we have tonight comes from Josh, and Josh says, based on your past experiences, will this rain we got recently have a noticeable impact on the nectar flow? So
Rain.
Cheryl, you posted that you got a lot of rain. What do you think?
Well, that post was originally posted with our previous rain, not the one just this past week that gave us 2 inches.
Yeah.
How many?
We had 2 inches in just this past weekend, but that post, I actually responded to that.
Well, I'm in North Overland Park, and that storm came all the way towards us, but it went south.
Yeah.
We didn't get any.
This post though is originally with the last rain previous to that. So we were a little bit earlier in the season. And my response was, well, it can't hurt if we were going to go into a severe drought and not have any rain at all. I'd rather take a chance on getting an inch or so. But yeah, it does wash out the pollen and the nectar, and we're getting far enough into the summer now. You know, our clover, I think Joe said she actually had some bees working some Dutch clover as recent as the weekend, and I had some working some of the last sweet clover. But I'm looking further down the road. I'm looking at fall and having enough moisture content in the soil to sustain our sunflower flow and our aster. If things dry up now, you can forget that come this fall. So I'm looking at the long, not for what I'm going to put in honey supers right now, because that's about done. But I'm looking at the health of the colony and what forage, nectar and pollen sources to go into fall. And so I'm very thankful for the rain.
I think Bob makes a terrific point as well about it skipped him. I got enough to barely register in the rain gauge.
It's real
And so when we're talking about your specific area, I think it makes a really good point about having an out yard, having bees in various locations so that you can take advantage of that, because what happened in Topeka is not what happened in Meriden or what happened in Overland Park. So I think that that's a good thing, but it also is pretty variable, and it is that long-term support, like Cheryl said. I think that's exactly it. Okay, we're on to Pat, and he says, and this is also one that was posted a while back, and he's wanting to use diatomaceous earth around and under his hives to help break the cycle of small hive beetle and wax moth larvae. I know it has to be reapplied after the rains. I figure doing it at night, wearing a mask and eye protection, but beyond that, any tips? And Robert, I think you weighed in on that question on the website too. You want to talk about that?
Well, I think if you're putting out diatomaceous earth, it's after the fact. After the incident, it's not going to prevent the beetles. It's going to be preventing them perhaps from being able to pupate in the ground, killing them that way. But that's not going to solve your problem because you've already been hit with the problem to begin with.
You've been slimed.
It might make you feel good, but it's not going to clean up your mess.
And I think the same thing, although soil nematodes have been mentioned as a real positive way to impact those larvae, it's again the larval stage. And so they've already hatched, dropped out of the hive, and they're doing their damage. So you've got a whole lot of damage in there. What about, he mentions the wax moths. Anybody want to comment on that?
They're all secondary invaders.
You
have to maintain a strong hive. So you've got probably something else going on in there that's causing these two type of invaders to move in. So you're not doing comb management, which is so crucial now.
No, in the past, I would put it on video. Stop.
Robert still got his mic on. So you need to have a strong hive, and you need to watch how many bees are on the comb so that they can protect, so that these secondary invaders don't get a foothold.
So, and your small hive beetle does pupate in the ground, but I don't think the diatomaceous earth is going to do a bit of good for your wax moth. And wax moth is, again, a secondary predator. We're going to deal with them by having nice, strong hives, but there is no contact with the ground. That whole thing, the pupate, everything happens in the hive. So the diatomaceous earth is not your
adult bee, or the adult flies in. Small hive beetle, the adult can fly in from as far away as a mile or more. So I see them fly in the evening.
It's not going to be a preventive measure.
No, it's not going to help you much. So hope that's it. We do need to be aware of those. Anybody seen many small hive beetle this year?
I've seen
Nope.
1 or 2 today in about 10 hives that I looked at, just 1 or 2.
I
Some,
see lots of shaking heads. We don't, not in any small hive beetles. That's good. 2 thumbs up. That's really good. So hopefully they aren't a problem. The next one comes from us from Turkey Creek Trees. And this is a little bit longer question. It says, I have a colony that has been queenless since I estimate around the first week of June. So about a month. Queen cells were made, some have hatched, a couple remain capped. As of today, the hive still seems queenless, no eggs or brood visible. There was some capped brood approximately a week ago. All those have hatched. The bees were noisy today as I pulled the hive apart to look for eggs and brood. From what I have read, that is an indication of them still being queenless. Should I try to install a mated queen if I can get one? I don't know how long I can let them go before they develop laying workers. They have started backfilling the empty brood with syrup. If I give them a frame of an open brood, will that delay the onset of laying workers? If a hive becomes queenless, when is the best time to introduce a new queen if I have one available? This hive, I believed, swarmed, and I didn't realize it until it was just last week. So we've got a whole lot going on there. Let's start with the development of laying workers, because we had so much swarming that I know if we had very many hives swarm at all, you had hives that didn't get requeened, and we are in that time frame now. Jolie, we haven't heard from you. You want to talk about laying workers and what's going on there?
You say so. Come up closer to the computer.
Probably if it's been queenless since the 1st of June, and how long has it been since you've actually had brood in there? Because
A week since
a week since it had brood, so it's generally about 2 weeks completely broodless before the laying workers get started. How many bees are left in this hive? There's a lot of variables about what to do and stuff like that. But yeah, you probably, if it's been all the brood, it's been only a week since you.
Well, it sounded like, didn't you think it sounded like
Can't hear you.
Did you think it sounded like he got a queen in there and then that queen failed too or something?
I don't think he ever put a queen in. He said, should I try to install a mated queen if I can get one? And then he said, could he add a frame of brood? And he said, would that delay the onset of laying workers, which I think is a yes. If that's his goal right now, is add a frame of brood, would delay the onset of laying workers and be a stopgap measure. Whether they can successfully raise their own queen right now, I think would be flip a coin. Anybody else?
Obviously, he has at least one other hive. If it was me this time of year, I would combine them with something that it sounds like they're pretty far down, probably in population and stuff. But
so there's a lot.
if it was my hive, that's what I do. But
then we have more hives, so you have more options. So I've always got somebody that could be combined. That's it. So if a hive becomes queenless, when is the best time to introduce a new queen if you have one available? That was part of his question.
well, if we think it's swarmed, we really wait at least 3 weeks.
Yep.
And see if we get a laying queen in there. But if at that point you don't have something, usually by the time you get a queen and go back, then there's a laying queen in there. But
yeah,
that's been our experience. But anyway, but yeah. We always wait 3 weeks. They'll
kind of cut out there.
if you try and put a queen in right away, they'll usually not accept her because they've accepted a queen cell. But
Yeah, that is the big trouble, is that you can spend a lot of money on queens that won't be accepted, and that can be a real issue. Is Steve Musburger, did he ever join us?
I don't see him.
Okay, because he does those push-in cages, which might be something to talk about. That's a great way to introduce a queen when you don't think they're going to take a queen. That's a good way to do it. So
I tried that. I tried that, Becky, with a hive that had swarmed, and it was a secondary swarm. Their virgin queen, something must have happened to her, and they were queenless. And I tried to use a push-in cage with some brood and a mated queen, and they killed her. So I ended up doing a newspaper with a smaller Queenrite nuke, and they took to her.
well, and honestly, that combining with an established colony is the surest bet. That's usually gonna do it for you. So, okie doke. So this is from Jim, and Jim wants to know bottom supering or top supering, and which is best and why. And Matt, I think you've talked about this. How about if you talk about this again?
Okay. So I guess some of it is personal preference, but typically if you have drawn comb, the best is to bottom super, because they have to travel less distance from their entrance to where they're going to deposit the honey. That also can be changed by where your entrances are. Some people use multiple entrances. I've even seen people that have entrances on each super. I would never do that, but if you did have multiple entrances, I could see that, you know, where you put your super wouldn't exactly matter. But for me, typically, I add all of my supers to the top. That's just how I do it, because I don't like lifting up my supers. I haven't really had any issue doing that. But if you're getting to the point like this part of the year where there's not an intense nectar flow, I would say bottom supering would be advantageous right now. Early in the spring, when they're just bringing in loads of nectar, I don't think it really matters, especially if you have a comb that's all empty. I think that they're going to put it wherever they're going to put it.
Isn't this where you say there's two kinds of beekeepers, those with bad backs and those that will have bad backs?
That's true.
That's true. Take your pick either way. I agree. Anybody else have a comment on bottom supering, top supering? I think that's it. It really isn't hard and fast.
I think it should be top supered. You should top super.
Let's make a comment about the multiple entrances. Gary Reuter at the Fun Day in his talk said putting entrances in the top was not a good practice, because the bees need to come in and transfer that nectar to those bees down in the brood area, and then they take them and put them in the super. So actually doing top entrances is not what works for the bees.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Also, allowing an upper entrance.
Yeah, messes up their ability to circulate air through the colony.
Yeah, you give the bees an opportunity to bring in pollen, and pollen is protein. And when you store that later in the fall, that's an opportunity for wax moth. That'll attract them.
Yeah, that and crystallized honey.
Yeah. So the other option is that the bees, when they're working the frames, they go up and work each frame and go from one side to the other side, or jump on them all at once, depends on your population. But when you bottom super, you're probably putting some unfinished open comb above that new super, and then the bees aren't really going to finish it.
Also, if if you bottom super and they haven't totally capped the original super that was on there, they may not finish that out if your nectar flow stops.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Oh, sorry.
No, thanks for adding.
Yeah, I've moved supers like that. Sometimes for whatever reason, late swarm or whatever, you'll have a hive that leaves a super, it's not all capped, and I'll just take it and move it to a hive that has plenty of bees left in it. So I do play the move the super around game. That's not always fun, but I have done that.
Michael Catsby commented that he bottom supers the first time and then he stacks after that.
Early,
That is good.
early morning, you might bottom super, but later in the day, you're too tired.
That's true
Well,
too.
what we found this year with putting so many supers on is if we had bottom supered, we'd be having to go down pretty far just to see if they were ready for another super, because we've had 4, 5, and 6 supers on.
That's true.
Very unusual. So it's, I don't know, it just seems like top supering works fine.
And then sometimes I think of bottom supering as like they put it below the bottom brood chamber.
Yes, some have done that.
And I've never done that. I don't know how that works. So I do want to clarify that we're talking about lifting off all of the supers and then putting the new one on and then stacking all your existing ones back on.
Okay. So next question is again from Turkey Creek Trees, and it's talking about bearding. Anybody seen any bearding recently? Yeah, a little bearding. And he asks, is bearding an indicator of not enough hive space? I understand that bees beard because of high temperatures. I do have an upper entrance drilled in a honey super on every hive, and I've even put shims between the honey supers and the brood boxes, just enough to allow air passage, but not allow for bees to enter or exit between the boxes, yet bees are still bearding on the hives. I guess what I'm asking is, will bees beard regardless of the numbers in the hive if the temps are high enough? Or is bearding an indicator that that should be taken as a sign that doing a split is probably in my best interest as a beekeeper? And the quick answer to that is no. But let's talk about bearding then. Who would like to weigh in on bearding?
Cheryl.
What?
Beards?
I think they're ripening honey and they just are creating more space and more airflow to help get the moisture out of the honey. I mean, you can have crowded situation. That's why I like to use slatted racks because I don't have near the amount of bearding in hives that I use slatted racks above the bottom board, but that's just another piece of equipment that you have to pay money for. But it can be because they're quite crowded, but you're going to find they're going to beard this time of year, and they're going to put droplets of water throughout the whole hive to try to cool the hive temperature and help to dehydrate that honey. So they're going to move all of them outside to help with the airflow going through there.
Lots of bearding. Yeah, I
Especially
agree.
when it's humid, more so when it's humid than the temperature per se.
Doing a split this time of year, risky, but a strategy for doing summer increases. The key to that is having drawn foundation to be able to do that, because they're not going to draw a lot of wax this time of year, and having mated queens. Both of those are the key to if you want to do a split right now. There's some Larry Connor's book, Increase Essentials, talks about doing summer increases. Really good strategy for building your hives. But boy, it isn't just, okay, we're done with our honey flow, let's make a split here. That's probably a recipe for disaster, but there's ways to do that. Robert, you've done quite a bit of that. Would you like to speak about the summer increases?
Well, I'm not doing any this year, and I don't think Cheryl's doing any. But generally, if I wanted to have extra, start some nukes for next year, I would start some or increased nukes. Right now, at the end of the honey flow, for example, on these hives where you're seeing a lot of bearding, you've got a lot of extra bees. You could, in fact, take a queen and take some drawn comb, and a deep or two is what I prefer, but singles work, and start a new colony with the new queen and those extra bees. If you have drawn comb, pretty much. And that's how you can, you have to overwinter the nuke and baby it, and make sure, you know, that they're gonna make it through, so.
We have someone asking, what does bearding look like, and have a picture. If anybody can look on their, kind of in their pictures and want to put something like that up, I bet there's some people out there that has some good bearding pictures. I'm not gonna be able to grab one right now, but, and there's probably some out there. Let's go on. Let me know if you find one. I'm gonna go on to Chris, and Chris says, when determining if a frame of honey is ready to extract, how much of the comb should be sealed over? What is acceptable for some of it to be yet to be sealed? That's wording's weird. And thank you in advance. So if you haven't read your buzzer yet, Jolie wrote about quite a bit about extracting your harvest from the voice of her dogs. They were busy talking about extracting questions. Jolie, you want to talk to that?
Would you repeat the question? My dogs are about to break their necks trying to get in the doggy door, so that's the noise in the background. So,
oh, they're anxious. Well, is it okay? How do you determine if a frame is ready to be harvested, and is it okay for part of it to be uncapped?
How do you determine if a frame is ready to be harvested? Well, we like to harvest them when, you guys, that's not me making the noise. Yeah, I don't know. We like to make sure that they're, I don't think that's us making that noise, someone else is. I don't know.
Got it, Robert?
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. I lost my train of thought. We like to make sure that the frames of honey are completely capped, but just because a frame of honey is completely capped, it does not mean that the moisture underneath the cappings is at the right, is below 18.6% moisture, so that it won't ferment. In this area, we have, and different areas, like you guys have mentioned about the rain being different.
The eastern part of Kansas, now I would guess that Jim Kelly, probably that's not an issue. I would bet that his world is dry enough that that's not it. But here in eastern Kansas, it is an issue. You mentioned that you can buy a refractometer for about $80. That's about a gallon of honey. So you don't have to think about how much you're going to, what is that honey worth to you? And so a refractometer will last you 30 years. I don't know. It's not something you have to buy over and over again. Buy what you can afford and make it part of your beekeeping equipment. I think that's well worthwhile to do. I think if not, find somebody who has one. There's a lot of us who do have one, and I think it's worth checking it before you do that. The only caveat, if you really only have 1 or 2 hives, you can do put your honey in the freezer, and it won't ferment in the freezer. So if you have a very small harvest, you can freeze it and be safe too. So that would, read the capping or read the buzzer, but good article in the buzzer.
Thanks.
So let's go on to Wade. Wade says, I've got a buddy who uses some essential oils, oregano or wintergreen, I think, in his sugar water. He says it can help with mite control and encourage consumption to help building comb. Any thoughts or experiences? I have no experience with this. Does anyone have experience with essential oils in your syrup?
Only Honey Bee Healthy is what I use.
And what is in Honey Bee Healthy?
Lecithin to keep it from thickening, but there's wintergreen and some other ones. But it's a product that I buy, and you can get it through the various bees supply dealers. But it's an additive to encourage uptake of syrup, but it's not for mite control. And it may have some other claims, but I don't use it that often, but generally in the spring sometime. But it's certainly not for control of any pest.
I agree. That's what I have heard. Here is the look for the Honeybee Health Coalition research. And if you are trying to do something to help with any kind of mite issue, they are the people to go to. There may be something that somebody is confusing Varroa mite with tracheal mite. Tracheal mite was dealt with mint. I don't remember whether it was wintergreen or peppermint or what mint it was, but mint oil was used in the treatment of tracheal mites. But we don't even have an issue with tracheal mites anymore. So I don't know what that's about.
It was menthol.
Menthol
Okay.
back in the 90s.
Menthol. So not the above. Honeybee Health Coalition, stick with them. They'll help you through those problems. All right, let's go on to Wayne. And Wayne says, I did my second hive inspection after putting on a second brood box. Looked very good, no problems except for disturbing the bees. Is there an easier way to inspect without, I'm quoting, without pissing the bees off so bad? Well, we haven't heard from the Pantoses. Pantoses, would you like to talk about that? Did I lose them?
They might have fallen off. I saw them earlier.
Oh,
Marlene.
there's Marlene. She's muted. Marlene, unmute.
I'm so slow with this stuff. Al, the word from Al is a little smoke will do it. Smoke them. They're not going to be aggressive to you, or that's what we have found.
Okay, Wayne, I have a little question about, says you put on your second brood box and you just did your second inspection. So when I'm starting a hive, we really like to do an inspection every 7 to 10 days at the very least. What do you think, Marlene?
Yeah, I agree with that. We do that also.
Yeah.
I kind of wondered when I heard that he had only done 2 inspections.
So I think that you're liable to have a problem get out of hand before you realize that it's there, if that's the case. But time of day when you're working your bees,
Right.
that's important. Don't work them in the rain. They're really not enjoying that.
Yeah, or cloud.
Yeah.
Cloud day. Usually they're better on a sunny day, we notice.
Especially early spring. This time of year, you get by with a lot of stuff, but
yeah, it's true.
But it just, so what is your favorite smoker fuel?
Ours.
Pine needles and cardboard.
Did you hear Alex? He says
I
pine needles. He loves getting pine needles and cardboard. And then he starts his smoker with just a little dab of that, what is it? The camping starter, that you use when you're camping. I don't know what the name of it is. So a little squirt of that starts it up, and then he loves the pine needles and rolled up cardboard.
What does everybody else like for smoker fuel?
I use burlap.
There's Chad. We haven't seen Chad yet. Welcome, Chad. What do you use for smoker fuel?
For us, we look at rolled up burlap, rolled up burlap, but I'll put a small handful of those smoker pellets or the wood burning pellets at the bottom for extended use. If I know that I'm going to be working hives for more than half hour to an hour, and that prolongs the use of the smoker, and I get a longer period of time out of it than just 15, 20, 30 minutes. Those wood smoker, those wood pellets will give you an extended period of burn time at the bottom with some rolled up burlap above it.
We like that as well. It's we use a lot of burlap. We use pine needles. Honestly, I wish Steve Musburger was on here because he's the one who gave us this hint. We use now a propane torch to start our smoker with, and it just, even mostly you have to have your smoker fuel dry. But with that torch, it can be a little tiny bit damp and it's still gonna go. I mean, it really sets it off, and it shoots that flame clear down to the bottom of the can, so you really get a good light on it. Getting it lit well is going to keep it going. So I really like that. So that's my story.
What
But
you uses with his, remember?
what'd you say, Marlene?
Oh, I was asking Alex, our student uses something else, and
Pine shavings, horse bedding.
horse bedding. The
Oh.
pine shavings from that you put in horse from a feed store. He gets that. He uses that, and he likes that.
Well, that'd be probably good too. Lots and lots of choices. Needs to be all natural. Just nothing synthetic.
And
You
keep
just
it going. Keep it going when you're working your bees.
There's a lot
That's
of
my
people-
job. If it goes out, then I'm in trouble.
Careful. There are a lot of people who think that you can use sugar water, a little sugar syrup to spray the bees with, and we will use a little syrup early in the spring when we're working like with package bees, because we don't want to use smoke at that time. But honestly, we feel like the smoke is it. So I don't know. I think that makes working bees a lot easier for sure.
I've heard so much talk about wood chips. Well, I finally stumbled across some, and they are really nice. Once you get your fire going, you add a few wood chips to it, and it'll just burn for the longest time.
That's good. Yeah, I agree. It can be. But it is that caveat: get it started.
Yes.
And so I think we
And
get
keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. So, moving on. Oh, this is a request. We have a member who is an Olathe beekeeper. Her name is Elaine, and she recently underwent a hip replacement. She is looking for someone willing to help her do her hive inspections. I don't think she has a lot of hives, but she needs someone that could help her out because she's had this hip replacement. And she said she can provide an email address if interested. She contacted us through our Facebook page. So I'm sure you could scroll back on our Facebook page and find her there. Any of you Olathe people who would like to lend a hand. So Elaine, I hope if you're listening tonight, I hope you're feeling better. Marcia says, I would like to hear about the best way or ways to control small hive beetle in your hives. So far, I've only seen a couple, but looking back at my notes from last year, they showed up at about this time. And she says she really enjoys our Zoom meetings because it's easy to fit into her schedule. Well, thank you, Marcia. I appreciate that. I'm glad you like that. So what's the best way to control small hive beetle? And Ed, well, haven't talked. Ed, do you want to talk about small hive beetle?
The problem with the small hive beetles that I've done is strictly on research basis. I've been using red tops and red entrance reducers. And the problem is that nobody's really had problems with small hive beetles the last 2 years. 3 years ago, they were just almost uncontrollable, which is what prompted me to try these experiments. But I can't deem them a success when I know that hardly anybody's having problems with small hive beetles. But with my red tops on, I have virtually no small hive beetles in my hives.
What do you mean red tops?
Well, they're a red clear plastic, cover. And so you get red light in the top of the hive, which the small hive beetles see, and they scatter from it, and the bees don't see it. It still looks dark to them. Like I said, it's an experiment. It's not something I'm recommending at this point till I get more data that shows when we have heavy infestation that I still remain virtually small hive beetle free. But it's interesting.
Well, cool. I'm anxious to hear.
I'll post the literature on it. I've got it. And then that's fairly expensive solution. There's a smaller one where you keep the small hive beetles out of the hive. And it's a special entrance that you put in your hive reducer. And that seems to keep them out also.
And do you get more temperature in your hives? Is it hotter when you're running those? I've read a little bit about those red tops too.
Yeah. I have not seen that. I find that I do better with insulated hives even in the summertime. It reduces my bearding and seems to be better control. So I'm a firm believer in 1.5 inch or 2 inch foam insulation on the outside of the hive.
And Ed may not have had problems with the small hive beetles, but I've lost a few hives last year. I think anytime there's an opportunity where they, like for example, if it goes queenless and you don't realize it and the population drops and they can get to the protein, which is the pollen, and lay some eggs and they're not guarded, not enough bees to take care of it, that will start a problem.
I'm surprised we don't have more issues with them this year with all the swarming we had going on.
Yeah. Well, I think having a cold month of May helped a lot because they stayed in longer than usual and they may not have lived as long as they normally do. Who knows?
Mike Casfy added to the chat group that Dr. Jamie Ellis is talking about small hive beetle and ABJ this month and put a link to it there. We had Dr. Jamie Ellis as a guest speaker a few years ago and really enjoyed his teaching. I haven't seen that article, but that's well worth doing it. Dave Murphy in the chat room says he uses an oil trap under the screen bottom board and never had a problem. That's a specific kind of trap. I think somebody online got confused and put oil on their bottom board and had bees die in the oil on their bottom board. So it has to be a special trap mechanism for that. It's not just put oil on your bottom board and take care of small hive beetles.
And your hive has to be mostly level.
Yeah, to make that work. You're exactly right. You're right.
So I'm sorry, Becky, I've got two people that had questions quite a while ago.
Oh, I missed them. Okay.
I just want to make sure we get to those before we get any further. Marcia had a question, and how much nectar is in a flower, and do bees revisit the same spot multiple times? And that's two questions. And the third question she had was, how do you not get small hive beetle in the first place? So I guess how much nectar is in a flower?
I don't know. Joe. Does it depend on the flower?
Yeah.
I'm sure it would.
Yeah.
Did you call my name?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
We have
I
a flower question.
Flower depends upon the species.
Yeah.
And what was the second part of the question?
Do the bees revisit the same spot multiple times?
Oh, yes. Yes. Because they practice flower fidelity. That means when they start working a particular species of flower on that visit, they will not hop from one species to another. They will stay with that species. Now, their next trip out, they may go somewhere else, but probably not. because they're sending back waggle dances. They're doing a waggle dance when they get back to the colony, telling them where they found this source. So yes, they will repeatedly visit
Okay,
the same source.
and then her third question was, how do you not get small hive beetle in the first place? If that's answerable.
Keep a strong colony that can be on top of them.
Go back to 1990 before we had them.
There you go. There you go.
Or 2010.
Keep your colony in full sun. That might help.
Who was the speaker that we had that said he had always thought that it was like strong hive, you went into trouble with small hive beetle. And he said they had them move in such quantities that they actually overtook some hives that were strong hives. They just like came in with so many small hive beetles. So it is keep a strong colony. But I think at some years, like Robert said, last year was not good for him. I think some years in some places, they're just awful. So then we need to really think about traps and how we're helping our hives defend their space.
But with insects and pests and that type of thing, a lot of things are cyclical.
Yeah.
If you look at like a rabbit population, one year the rabbit population will be really strong. The next year the coyotes move in and eliminate a lot of the rabbits, and then you have a lot of coyotes. And so things kind of are cyclical. So I think that probably could apply to small hive beetle.
I'd guess, like you said, everything. How about the nasty Japanese beetles? You guys had many of those this year?
No.
They're all at my house.
They're Cheryl's.
They're when you get up in the morning and it's not hardly even light out yet. It's like 5:30 a.m. in the morning. When you have that the first week of June, you're really excited because you know your bees are working the lindens. But when the lindens haven't bloomed since the 1st of June and you walk out over the 4th of July weekend and you hear the hum in the trees and it's barely light out yet, you look and you see all of the Japanese beetles flying around at the top canopy of your lindens, you know that they're dining on your leaves, and then your leaves will fall down. They look like lace this fall.
We've had a lot of bagworms.
Yeah, and we have bagworms really bad too.
Those are awful.
So the bagworms and the Japanese beetles are having a heyday right now.
Yeah, definitely with Japanese beetles, you know, you're looking at apple trees, plum trees, roses, elm trees, definitely the lindens.
The lindens are my favorite.
A lot of perennials, they'll hit the perennials pretty good as well. But those first 5 or 6 plants that I mentioned are their absolute favorites.
Okay, so this last week, someone was bashing using lures, again, for small hive, or not for small hive beetle, for Japanese beetle. And I know that you can't hang your Japanese beetle trap in your apple tree because you've just drawn in the Japanese beetles to your trees, that would be wrong. But this person was maintaining that the lures actually bring in some of our native bees and that they are attracted to the lures as well. Does anybody else seen that? Because when the year I trapped so many of them, I don't ever remember seeing anything in the traps except Japanese beetles.
Yeah, I've never
I faithfully used the
anything.
traps for probably 4 or 5 years because we're a pesticide free farm with our orchard, and with 125 fruit trees, I'm able to control it completely. It may pull in some from neighboring areas, but when you have a food source like I do with 120 apple trees, they're going to find that anywhere or any way, and they're going to be, they're going to be attracted in. So what we do is we utilize the traps. We put them at different corners of our property to pull them away from the fruit trees. The prevailing wind direction from the orchard, depending on the day, and then we move the traps every 2 days so that the beetles don't hone in and
Yes.
kind of catch a pattern, and then and then every 2 days we empty them. And I have little to no damage, and we've got all kinds of plant material that they would love to snack on. So it's how you use them, how do you utilize them, where you place them, and how often you move them and how often you empty them. And no, I've never had native bees or anything else in them.
Okay, I hadn't either. Okay, thanks. That's good. And that's great results. Good job.
Becky, I had one more person with a question, Martha Lamfer. Her question was, can you discuss Varroa mite management after honey has been harvested? What to use when it's very hot, etc.?
That's a good question. We're about to get there. Jim Kelly, are you with us?
He's online. I've asked to unmute. We'll see if he's.
I'm here.
There he is.
You live in the western part of our state, but you are harvesting honey, and I think you deal with your bees very carefully. So how would you answer her question about dealing with Varroa mite immediately after honey harvest?
I think you have to be very careful of what you're going to use. It's so many of them are temperature sensitive. And so, for instance, if we were to use the Max out here, which we attempted when they first came out, we're pulling honey in September, and you would think that would be cool, and probably is in Northeast Kansas, but out here it's still 95 to 100 degrees in September. And so the Max would immediately just crash the whole entire hive. So we have to be very careful right now. If we are going to do that, we're going to use the Apivar strips, and that one seems to work, but it is the reason we're doing it so quickly for us is because September is about the end of the line before you're actually going to get them killed off to prevent anything as far as the October bees that will go into winter. So we have to do it just as soon as we're through extracting. Matter of fact, it goes in on the same at the same time that we're extracting. So when we have all the honey pulled, my helper, Mrs. Beekeeper, is right behind me placing the Apivar in there if we decide to use that. We have used thymol as well. We need to change things around, not just use Apivar all the time. So the only thing about that one is then that you do have to come back out and do it a second time. I think that's called Apiguard.
I think the newer Formic Pro is the same as the Mite Away Quick Strips, which you were calling the Max.
Yeah, they used to be called Max, but
yeah, but it's the same issue. Too hot.
Yeah, way too hot for it. It just doesn't seem to be a good idea here in Kansas, period. I think that's mostly the fellows that I've heard of use it. Mostly it's in South Dakota and up in that area there because it's cool enough. By that time it's in the 80s and it seems to work fairly well there, or if you're high in the mountains.
And that's unfortunate because that's one of the few things that can be used while honey supers are still in place if you wanted to do that fall honey crop. So it's, again, Honeybee Health Coalition. They have some really good information for helping you when you want to, if your hive is decreasing, things that you can use. So glad you're here tonight, Jim. Thanks for joining us.
I just did a screenshot of some information. Like, if you want to take it off, if you're able to pull it off in the chat box, that'll give you a lot of options and information.
Very good. For mite
treatments, yes.
Very good, very good. Rich wants to know, why do my bees congregate around one end of their bottom board entrance? Do we have any idea why they would prefer one end over the other?
Might be that one side is full of capped honey and the other side's got brood.
I wondered that, or
population might be going down. They might be queenless and not have enough bees.
The way the air current is, or something. I don't know. There's just so many variables. I don't know, Rich. We can only guess. We can only guess. Um,
Okay, thanks. I'll think about those.
I wish I had better answers. Someone has asked a lot of questions about, and that I don't have a name on this person. So about harvesting honey. Jolie, this probably, I think you've answered most of this. Can I safely harvest frames that are capped, or do I need to check moisture? We kind of talked about that. What's the best refractometer?
The best refractometer is about $400, which is a Tago. Is that a Tago? We think that's a really good one, but you don't need one that good. We think that the $25 ones, don't waste your money, but there's some really nice ones in that $80 to $125 range. And honestly, I would not buy one off Amazon. That is definitely something I would get from one of the bee supply companies, because then you know it's one that's for honey. It's not one that they check sugar syrup on or different, they use them for different things. And if you're going to spend that much money for something, I would really make sure and get it from, Man Lake, Date Ant, one of the local bee supply dealers or something like that. Just sorry, my dogs are going to have broken necks by the time we're done with this tonight, but maybe you can't hear them.
I a little bit, but not much. They're fine. That's not a problem. So apparently we've done so many Zoom meetings. Quincy doesn't care anymore. He used to bark the whole time I was talking to people on Zoom, and now he's like, no, she's talking to the computer again. I don't care. So he's all right with that. So how can I bring the moisture down in my honey? And I know you wrote about this in the cappings, or in the buzzer. I'm sorry.
So the best way to do it is a small room, like a bathroom or your room, or not in your basement. Before is the best way to bring the moisture down. And we usually crisscross our hives and run a dehumidifier out in the honey house. It's a bee tight room, so bees can't get in most of the time. We did have a member once who put a tarp over her supers and put a dehumidifier in there and a fan, and it got so hot that all the honey ran off the comb. You just need a small room is better, and run a fan and a dehumidifier, and have someone check. People in this club who have refractometers, just call one of us and run over. I think the bee supply dealers do. It is a service that the club can offer. We'll check any ones. I know Stephen Becky will. Chad said he had one. So that's kind of the 3 or 4 corners of the club. I think Steve Messberger has one. And honest, if the thing with waiting till you extract your honey and then checking the moisture is you have a small area that you can dehumidify the honey from. Either you've got it in a bucket or in small pails or small jars. And so it's only giving up a little moisture at a time. You cannot pour honey in a tray, or a cookie sheet and try and dehumidify it, because you'll spill it. It's, it's just common sense. And so if you can check it, check a few frames before you extract. That's the best recommendation. So anyway.
All good. And harvest soon after you pull your honey because of small hive beetle. Again, that's one of the times we really need to be careful that hygiene is really important. So this next question comes from Jay, and Jay says, when you combine hives, you put down a piece of paper between the 2 hives. What is the purpose of the paper? And is it to buy a little time so that the colony without a queen can get used to the scent of their new queen while they chew through the paper? I think a lot of us have done paper combines like that. Joe, have you done that this year, or would you?
Yes, I have. I've done some newspaper combines this year, and I think he answered his own question. Yes, it buys some time, lets the pheromones mingle, and then you'll have much greater success.
They
They're
really
less
do
likely
that.
to kill. They're less likely to kill the existing queen that's there.
That's true. Can you do it anytime? That was part of his question as well that I didn't get read. Does it matter when you do a combine?
I don't think so. I've not had any problems. It's an effort to save bees that are in the queenless colony, and you're just beefing up the colony that has the queen. So, and that often happens late summer, early fall. You'll find you have a colony queenless, and that's a good time to combine. So we're coming into that.
It is, though, as we come into the fall, I think that point is that don't wait too long to combine those colonies. Get them combined so they can do that build up and be strong going into fall. But yet there aren't really, if you find a queenless colony, fix it. So that's it. Okay, we've had a couple of questions that are real similar, so I'm going to try to read this one from D. What do I do if my bees keep making honey in their 2 deep boxes, leaving less and less comb for the queen to lay her eggs? I have all stages of development, new eggs, larva, brood, etc. This has been at about a 2-month battle. I've had a super on for weeks and weeks. I've tried spraying the new super frames with sugar water. Bees go up there, but they don't build comb. I fed them 1-to-1 syrup for a while, trying to help them along, but still no comb in the super. I've pulled out filled deep frames of honey when I find them and replace with new foundation frames. They don't have any comb, and they eventually build some comb on those frames, but fill it in with honey before the comb is completely filled out. Now every frame is mainly honey with some egg, larva, brood, but no honey only frames, none in her honey supers. Another beekeeper suggested taking out the queen excluder or putting the super between the 2 deeps. Really? She asks. Help. By the way, this hive swarmed. A lot of that happening. So this is their new queen. She seems to be laying fine when she has room. And she says, this person says, I can't make it to tonight's meeting, so she'll be watching the recording, and she appreciates our guidance. So a lot going on there, but swarmed hive, and now she can't get them to build foundation or get them to build brood up above. Anybody else have that problem? Cheryl, you've never had that problem. Come on.
Some of it's timely right now. I mean, we're past the summer solstice. They're not going to build wax. When they swarm, they don't have bees to care for. They don't have larvae to feed. And so the colony naturally gets plugged up with nectar during that time of requeening. Sometimes I get concerned that they're so plugged up going into fall, and you're trying to get some good cycles of brood going into fall, that I've known some beekeepers that will pull the outside frames that are drawn frames and extract those. They won't eat that honey because it's probably been treated with chemicals that we use to treat for Varroa mites, but you could uncap those. You could spin them in a 2-frame extractor and discard that honey and put those drawn combs on the outside of the brood nest. But naturally this time of year, they're going to start backfilling all the top box with nectar, and they're going to push the queen downstairs into the bottom brood chamber. But if you want to try to open up some frames, especially on the outer sides of the bottom brood chamber, and you want to go to that much trouble, you could do that. They may just try to backfill it as fast as she can try to lay in it. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Robert?
I'm sorry, I was answering something in the chat room. I did get distracted.
Becky, what do you guys do?
You're exactly right. And you know what? Bees do what they have to do. And so although we want them to fill their honey supers, they're probably pretty happy with what they've got. And so they're not going to feel compelled to go up into that honey super.
We don't
I
have
would not-
a flow right now to go up into
No,
the super.
no, they aren't needing to store that nectar. There isn't a lot of nectar for them to go up and do that. I would not remove the queen excluder. I would not ever put the super in between those two. Why? Because your queen will go in there and that will be the place that she lays the brood, and then you will have brood stained frames forever for your honey supers. And I just personally don't like that. Other people, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal at our house. We don't like it because it's very attractive to small hive beetle. It's very attractive to wax moth, and it's harder to extract those brood frames. The cocoons that are in there that makes it dark brown are just hard to run your capping knife through. It makes it just hard all the way around. So I don't like that. And the fact that they haven't drawn that yet, there's always next year. And I know that's not fun. Lots of people I know at this time, they haven't treated for mites. This is a brand new colony. You have a frame or two that's got a lot of honey in it. They'll extract those. So something to think about, especially this early. Extract it, throw it back in the hive, because they should still have the time to fill that out.
So the way I like to explain it is that if the queen lays, when she lays eggs in the comb and that pupates, they spin a cocoon. That's what turns it brown and dark. That's protein to the wax moth. And when you store those for the season, they're going to be more attracted to those honeycombs and those honey supers because of the brood comb in there. They can smell them out. And that's where the danger is. And, you know, if you don't catch them, or if you store them when it's hot, which is what the wax moth larva likes and grows quickest, you're just going to, you know, take a chance on having that pest problem.
It's just one more way to help eliminate the pest problem. We don't let that get started. And so I agree wholeheartedly. So I think that's it. And it's tough. You think that you've got your hive to a point where, yes, they're ready to make some honey and I can do this. And then they just sit there and look at you.
One thing we do, if, you know, we have more than one hive, and a lot of you don't, but if we have a hive that isn't going up in the super, we'll go to another hive in the yard and find a frame of honey that they, with some nectar in it. And then we'll exchange an empty frame into that and move that over to that. And sometimes that just kind of baits them up into the super and will get them started in that.
We try to do the same thing, like with a drawn comb. So if I have some drawn foundation and I can put one drawn up there, but when you're starting off and it's brand new, maybe you don't have anything to put up there, but both of those are good. And you can take those bees that are in those, that are working in that super, and not worry about whether you're transferring them between hives. That's not going to be a problem for you either. So, oh, Mike says this is why drawn foundation is a beekeeper's best friend. You can never have too many spare frames of comb. That is pure gold. You've got that. So, well, I am to the end of my questions that people have submitted. We've been doing this for a little over an hour now. Does anybody have any that they want to kind of close out with tonight? I hope you noticed in the buzzer that our meeting this month is next Monday. It's not the third Monday, and that's a Douglas County issue. If they were having their county fair, it would have conflicted with our meeting, which is why we scheduled it. And since it was already on the schedule, it seemed like a good idea to keep that instead of going to the third one. So that's it. Just be sure that you pay attention. It's next Monday night.
And it'll be a Zoom meeting? It'll be a Zoom meeting.
It'll be a Zoom meeting. It is, we are Zooming still. So You know, we hope to be able to meet again in person, but
I'm not to bring the COVID situation up, but I think I saw where Cheryl communicated there was the mask order for Pawnee County.
Starting Thursday. Outdoor as well as indoor if you cannot socially distance, and they can fine you up to $2,500.
I thought that was the interesting part, that they put some teeth in it, that they want this done, that they will be issuing fines. So,
Yeah.
Or the fact that we have no tax money, and so we'll be issuing fines.
There you go.
Got to raise revenue somehow.
You got to raise revenue somehow. So.
Douglas County have a mask order? Someone was mentioning
but I don't.
Over to Douglas County to go grocery shopping than to come to Pawnee County because yesterday they didn't have any
Douglas County, Johnson County, Wyandotte County.
masks. Yeah.
Mask orders.
But not Reno.
Yeah.
I just want to say it's been a great session. Thanks, folks. Thanks for all your input.
Well, thank you, Ed. Thanks for, we'll be in touch. We'll be doing this again. So we'll at least have one more, we'll plan another Zoom meeting for next month. It'll be, send in your questions and we'll try to get them answered.
Tell them thanks for me for the
Appreciate you coming.
newsletter.
Somebody asked about a newsletter?
I just said thank you so much for this superb newsletter. I can hardly wait to read the thing. It is wonderful.
Cheryl is our editor, so thank you
Yes.
to Cheryl. Everybody high-fiving Cheryl, because yes, she does a great job.
Thanks to everybody who contributes and anytime I ask for help, they're so eager to help me. So I appreciate it.
Big hand for Becky for running this Q&A session.
Yeah.
I didn't write it. I just got them together. That's it. Thanks. But thanks, guys. Thanks for the contributions. I think it's fun. So have a good week. Stay
Good night,
cool.
all.
Talk to you soon.
Good night.
Be safe.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Bye.